just watched them hogtie these guys, and we knew their hands were, tied behind their backs.
He says the Australians called the US pilots to pick them up, as well as 7 prisoners. But the pilot told them there was only room on the aircraft for 6.
And you just heard a silence, and then we heard a pop, and then they said, okay, we have 6 prisoners. So it was pretty apparent to everybody involved in that mission that they had just killed a prisoner.
Josh, that's not his real name, says he was a door gunner on board an American chopper, providing aerial cover for the Aussies that night in 2012. Australian Special Forces 2nd Regiment's November platoon was said to be conducting a raid with partner forces to crush drug operations funding the Taliban. Josh claims Australia's Special Forces overstepped the mark.
It was a very deliberate decision to, break the rules of war.
But 34-year-old former Special Forces Commando Heston Russell says he was in charge of November platoon at the time. What you are seeing now is helmet cam vision taken during his deployment. He says what's alleged never happened. You were the commanding officer with the platoon all the time.
Yep.
And you never saw anything that has been alleged.
Absolutely. That is correct.
And you say that no prisoner was ever summarily executed that you saw.
So we're responding to the direct allegation that this Marine on a mission heard 7 detainees turn to 6 and heard a pop, and that was the execution, and that never happened.
The ABC is standing by their story. They say that they have no knowledge of your involvement at the time.
Because they have not asked any Australians who are on the ground. They haven't asked myself, even since this has come to air. They haven't asked the commanding officer.
Holy.
So to your knowledge, November Platoon never deployed without you in 2012?
So November Platoon never deployed on any of our 20 missions into Helmand, Afghanistan without me. We flew 67 missions on our 5-month deployment.
You told us that the Inspector General is not investigating the claims of the US Marine. Is that right?
I have not, to my knowledge, been required to come forth on this matter, hence the only reason why I can actually talk about this.
At a press conference during the week, the Prime Minister seemed to indicate that there would be an investigation into this.
The reports are troubling and the claims are exactly why this process was set up. Now, the Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force is conducting that inquiry to determine whether there is any substance to those rumours and allegations.
Do you welcome that?
Absolutely. Any allegations, I'm more than welcome to be put forth for investigation. And again, we stand ready to provide evidence in response to anything, and we're just asked to be afforded that opportunity to do so.
For nearly 4 years, the Inspector General of Australian Defence Force has been focusing on the behaviour of our Special Forces in Afghanistan. His report is expected soon, but for now, Heston is concerned by what he says is a trial by media. Is there a sense amongst you all that you feel like you're being hung out to dry?
Absolutely. It feels like there's a bit of a witch hunt underway, and I'm not going to stand here and say that over 10 years of Special Forces counterinsurgency operations in Afghanistan, things occurred that should not have occurred. We were not perfect, we tried to be.
You good? As soon as I open up, we'll move. If they turn out to be accurate, the allegations stand up, that can't just be an isolated incident.
Last week on our show, former Chief of Defence Admiral Chris Barry expressed concern about a culture of brutality across the Special Forces.
Some of our Special Forces went back 12 times. I'd argue that is unconscionable. In the all-volunteer force, asking people to go back and spend 6 months, 9 months on each deployment leads to a culture or an atmosphere of greater brutality, because on each successive deployments you want to make sure you survive it. And as I say, I think that really does attack the idea of a force for good.
I saw the segment from Admiral Barry. I know how extremely inappropriate it is to have left an organisation in 2001, comment on the culture of an organisation that you were not a part of within 2012 in the context of 2020. The culture that I deployed with in 2012, and that still sees my guys support each other here and now as we are failing mentally and emotionally, is a culture that would see us march into the gates and hell and back if the Australian public asked us to do so, and we would volunteer to do so. So I definitely don't want to get in a slinging match with a former Chief of Defence Force.
To your knowledge, has the Defence Force reached out since the ABC report to anyone in your platoon?
No one from the Defence Force or the Department of Veterans Affairs has reached out to anyone ex-serving from my platoon, including myself. Our entire support architecture for veterans is reactive. It is waiting for people that you have indoctrinated to put service and others before themselves, to reach out, put themselves first for the first time in their life and ask for support. And we wonder why we've lost more people to suicide over the last 20 years than we did 10 times in combat.
Yeah, mate, we're just manoeuvring around to the other side.
I saw my men forged to the most extreme levels of mateship and bonds under combat, risking their lives for others without regard of their own.
Tracer!
At the same time, war absolutely brings out the worst in some people, and that absolute power can absolutely corrupt. And I look forward to hearing the findings of this investigation, but I just really want that to be waited for and for people to be able to have their day in court that are needed to.
Why do you feel the need to speak out on this?
I carry that responsibility that was placed in me by my soldiers to conduct these operations to risk their lives in support of Australia and the mission we had there in Afghanistan, at a time when no one else from Defence is speaking out, at a time when they're being attacked on social media, when their children are watching TV and asking them if they're murderers. And I refuse to watch the soldiers from my commando unit be looked at through the same lens as those veterans who returned from Vietnam, who were misunderstood and who were accused without being able to defend themselves.
And if you are a former or current serving ADF member and this story has affected you, there is help. Open Arms provides free and confidential counselling and support. The number is on the screen.